Via telephone, the House Caucus chairman, owner of this building, and all things inside of it, Mr. Michael Hornby.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Matt and John.
Good morning.
Morning. How's it going there, Chief?
Doing good. Should be a good day today. It slowed down a little bit. We made it through crossover day, so the schedule's a little lighter for the next couple of days, but we're now starting to work on Senate bills.
And that was yesterday was crossover day, meaning no new legislation can be introduced starting today and moving forward, correct?
Yeah, technically that's true.
Okay, how do you get around that?
So, and the Senate's they've become very good at this over the last few years. But yeah, if you can find a piece of code that is open, you can put whatever you want in a bill. It's not the best practice, but there are certain times that happens.
I did not know that. Hey, I know you were on hold the last 7-8 minutes of the Clay Riley interview. We talked about the legislation out of the Senate. SB 707 for West Virginia birth to 3 would provide a 25% increase in the reimbursement rates from what I read. And I know that you've been doing some work on that in the House, too. Mike, your thoughts on that bill? And if you did any legwork yourself on that as the caucus chair, give me an idea what happened.
Yeah, well, we had a House version that Delegate Pritt had that did not make it out of finance. However, the Senate bill has made it across. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of it, but as Clay said, it's very, very unusual to have actual salaries in code if you're not a teacher. But I believe that the Finance Committee will address that within the budget. I know they have increased the funding to that department moving forward. I honestly hope 707 passes, but it doesn't have to pass for us to actually address this issue as long as we can increase the funding to that program.
Yeah, I have Mike Height on tomorrow morning at 8, by the way, out of that committee. That. Yeah, is there anything that can be done? Clay addressed this a little bit in regards to if you give the department more money, is there a way to make sure that they direct it in the appropriate place so these people who haven't had a reimbursement increase in 20 years can get one?
Yeah, I think you can put in language within it. I know Mike has a amendment to the budget tomorrow, which directs language for IDD waivers, things like that, where they can't move that money out of there to spend somewhere else. So there can be something done. I know the House is working really hard with the department to make sure we get those folks their much-needed increase.
What looks like it's going to pass as we get to these final days of this legislative session?
Well, a lot of things are going to pass. I
mean with meat on the bones. I don't mean the little tiny stuff about standing up on your motorcycle.
So, let's just talk about it. Senate Bill 748 is in finance, and I think that has a strong ability to get to the finish line. Of what it looks like, I don't know. But it's the 1% sales tax with a referendum. That will be probably up for a vote on the House floor, in my opinion. And
they're calling this the safety tax, Mike, amusement tax?
It is called a Creating Safer Communities bill.
All right. And would this bill also be something that they would use in areas where it's a resort and they want to collect additional money to be able to provide services?
From what I have seen, it come through committee, it went through GovOrg, I sat in and watched. It is a permissive thing. They can either choose sales or amusements. It has to go to referendum. There are guardrails in there where counties have to have a fire fee or a levy in place, things like that. And it has to be used for there's a bunch of services that it has to be used for. It passed pretty overwhelmingly in the Senate. I think 2 of our senators both voted for it.
It can't be used to backfill a budget because you're short somewhere else.
That is true.
All right. So does it sunset after so many years, or is it on in perpetuity if it's passed, for instance, if it's passed?
The version that came out of the Committee of Government Organization and went up to Finance doesn't have a sunset, I don't believe.
And
that doesn't mean it won't change. It's still got to go through a whole committee process still.
there was talk that if a tax like this was ultimately passed, that would be included with legislation that would reduce county commissioners' terms from 6 to 4 years. Is that also associated with this?
I can't answer that, Rob. I do know that the bill has it in there that you can't have a rain tax or what we call stormwater management tax in there too. So, so there are some guardrails, and as I said, it still has to go through the finance committee and get done. But I do believe that it is a priority bill.
When you say you can't answer that, is it because you don't know the answer, or right now you're not permitted to answer?
Well, I don't know what will happen in finance is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
There are a number of amendments that need to be put into that, exempting the car sales and that, just kind of like what we did with the municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we don't want to include car sales on that because all the surrounding states are lower than us anyway.
Would it exclude groceries?
Well, the food's not taxed anyway.
Right.
Food's not taxed at all.
So it couldn't go back on groceries for a penny.
No.
Okay.
And to be clear, this is not a vote to bring in a 1% sales tax. This is to create the opportunity for a referendum, county by county, to.
This is a permissive to allow the counties to decide if they would like to put it on the ballot. This is what this bill does.
Now, it's interesting because I'm probably going to get the exact numbers wrong here, but I think in speaking with Eddie Gokenauer and others at the county commission, a 1% sales tax in Berkeley County would bring in something like $4 million a year. And if it can only be used on fire and rescue and police, I'm thinking, that's gold-plated fire trucks at that level.
I think there's enough in there that we could definitely use it for a lot of different things.
Well, yeah, and I think, John, it sounds like this bill's version would also require that Berkeley County offset the storm water management tax.
Correct.
With this, so that would eat into a chunk of it, and I don't have those numbers.
Eddie's point was not about buying the best fire trucks available; it was hiring paid firefighters, which they're trying to put in every.
No, and I'm not suggesting that we don't need all of that. I'm just saying, if the guardrails are strictly for, just emergency response, because we've got 81, there are certain counties that are going to be awash in money. It's going to be really hard, almost difficult to spend on. If the restrictions are too tight.
I don't think any county will ever have any difficulty in spending
Well, that's
money.
true. That's true. Yeah.
John's thinking about coming out of retirement, being a firefighter.
No.
Well, Berkeley County is short, 40 deputies when you look at the ratio of deputies to population and the need for paid firefighters. I think that's a small amount toward that.
This also could be used for school resource officers, too.
School safety, yes, got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead, Matt Harden.
So there's some much broader terms in there where you could really there's a lot of things this could be used for, and it's up to the county to sell that to their citizens.
And the citizens vote no. There's no 1% tax. It's as simple as that.
That is correct.
So, Delegate Hornby, last time I was on here and you were here, there was a pause on the Senate running the House bills. Has the temperature cooled on that?
Well, I think that's normal, Matt. What happens is when you get toward the end of towards crossover day, the House pauses on Senate bills, the Senate pauses on House bills. We try to get all of our bills through because we know, as of today, we can only run Senate bills. So we have all the Senate bills on the agendas and all the different committees, and we're running Senate bills right now.
We spoke with Delegate Riley about the microgrid bill earlier this morning. Is there any? I wanted to ask him, didn't have time. What's the appetite for that in the Senate, or has that been? Do you know?
I think that bill's going to be that bill is going to be a huge win for West Virginia. I think it's a governor's priority bill. I don't see any issues in the Senate, to be honest. But I'm not over there. But I certainly, to the people I talk to, I don't think. It's a major issue. There may be some changes to it because the Senate has to do what the Senate does. But I think it's a major win for West Virginia.
Oh, I agree. That's just
and if you talk to Clay Riley, I mean, he pretty much wrote that bill. There's nobody that understands that bill better than he does.
I mean, what you could do is you could have data centers or come in and use West Virginia produced coal and natural gas.
Yeah, I mean, there was just announced yesterday, just outside of Pittsburgh, they're using natural gas. I think don't quote me on this, but I had dinner with Clay last night. We were talking about, I think they just had a $6.5 billion investment, not in West Virginia, but a microgrid out past near Pittsburgh, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, Clay mentioned that during his interview. Indeed.
Okay.
So at this stage, now that we've gone over crossover day, we're coming down to the last minute. The big controversial losses, I guess, for the governor's agenda being certificate of need and the school vaccinations. Can we expect some parliamentary manipulations trying to bring those back to life, or are those dead?
I'll just give you my opinion. I can't predict what will happen, but I think they're dead. I don't think the House has any appetite in running any of those. We spent a good part of 6.5 hours on the vaccine bill on the floor, not to mention multiple weeks in committee. The same thing with certificate of need and multiple versions of certificate of need. So I don't think we want to spend any more time. We need to go back to the drawing board and come up with something different for next session.
All right, I want to get into a couple of things that deal with schools. One is a bill you have to modify the school aid formula to provide more support for schools under certain circumstances. And I also would like to know what the progress is on anything dealing with oversight of the SSAC. Mike?
All right, so I'm truly disappointed. I've been working on the school aid formula bill for the better part of 4.5 months. The committee has been working on this all year. We really wanted to give the BOEs a little more leeway in how they spent their funding, so we opened up step 7D of that formula to allow them to spend a little more freely. And then we also opened step 2, which is service personnel / aides, to give them a little more flexibility with special needs. Unfortunately, most of our priority bills from the Education Committee did not make it through House Finance or even got brought up for discussion. It is frustrating for those of us on the Education Committee because a lot of our bills or a lot of our fixes for education are tied to money. So it's the reason Clay and I had dinner last night to try and figure out how we can either work together or we can figure this out, because this working in committee and then sending everything to finance with just numbers, I don't think is the best way to do it, because those committee members on finance, they deal with numbers every day, whereas our committee is dealing with actual educators and what we think is best. So I think there's a flaw in the system there, and it's something that I'd like to explore down the road, maybe doing things a little differently.
Let's talk about a couple of oversight things, including the BOE, the state BOE, and the SSAC.
Yeah, so the state BOE, I have real confidence that one passed yesterday, clarifying the duties of the state superintendent regarding rule implementation and funding. So that passed the Senate yesterday. I'm excited. It was my first bill that actually made it. I've got 8 over in the Senate. The SSAC one, that's coming over from the Senate, where it puts them under the Department of Education. I'm a huge supporter. I always have been. You guys know that. I'm going to do my best to get that sucker to the end.
The SSAC is an interesting relationship I've had over the 35 years I've worked in West Virginia, because those folks, we're just you. We're the athletic directors, the principals, the representatives. You know, before you get on the SSAC board, if you're in education, every conversation I've had, these people rail against them. And then when they get promoted to those positions, all of a sudden, well, you know, it's not quite understood, you know, all the good that they do there. It's a fascinating building, Mike, and I applaud your efforts to get some oversight of that building.
And listen, Mr. Price is a far better executive director than the last gentleman that ran. I can't remember his name, but I have nothing against him personally. I do not envy his position. He's got two boards he has to answer to. One is a bunch of, obviously, principals, and then he's got a whole bunch of people. So they get the raw end of the stick a lot of the time. However, if they were under the Department of Education or even just under rulemaking review, some of that pressure could come off of them, and we could share that burden and work with them. It's one of those things where there's no elected person involved at all, and sometimes those decisions that they make are not the most popular, and so they need to answer to somebody. And parents and students, they ask us the questions, and we have no oversight over them at all.
There was a bill that would modify the process for requesting information that passed the House.
Yeah.
Could you describe?
Is this the FOIA information?
Yes. So this is a basically, this bill does nothing. It doesn't change anything. What it does do is that it says when we make our rules, which we do every 2 years, or mainly in the off season, we'll make House rules. House rules take precedent over everything except for the Constitution. So when we make House rules, we will set our FOIA standards up, and then this bill will go into effect. Now, we still have to vote. It is still public. It still gets out there. These are our FOIA rules. We have been inundated with random requests from all over the country of FOIA requests from, I want every email that every House member or staff has sent that has the word baby in it. Those kind of requests are extremely taxing on the staff. We definitely, and I'm a part of the press, so we are not trying to curb any of the press's way to look at us. We want to keep it as transparent as possible. But there are frivolous requests that are out there. So I envision that we will have guardrails of the things that, listen, you can email any email that I send out, that's fine. If you've got a reason, or if you're the press and you want to see every email Mike Hornby sent out, I have no problem with that.
Well,
so those rules will come back to us. We'll probably revisit them next session, and then they'll be put out to the public for public comment. And then we'll adopt them or modify them as we see fit. But that bill does nothing at this point.
So if the House acknowledges that there can be a lot of FOIA requests that eat up a lot of resources, why not extend those protections to other government agencies and county governments?
Well, we can't. The executive can. The FOIA requests are on the executive agencies and things like that. We govern ourselves with our House rules. So and of course we're working with the Senate can adopt their rules too, but we are the legislation. We govern ourselves with House rules. So this is just the way it is under the Constitution, and we're able to do that. And so we just think it needs to move from code to House rules.
Are you?
Well, I was like, well, we get at the county level, local level, we get inundated with FOIA requests.
Sure.
And we don't have the option of saying, well, we're going to modify what we have to turn over.
You don't have the option, but you do have the option to say no to certain things. Because I've FOIA requested the Sheriff's Department multiple times on the County Commission, and there's certain things you can say no to.
HB 3154 got voted down yesterday by a 52-45 count. This would have expanded advertising opportunities for limited video lottery places. Mike, how did you vote on that?
Well, you know how I voted.
I would assume you voted yes.
Yeah, I voted yes. These limited video lottery folks are the folks that live in our area. They're small business owners. I didn't have an issue with that bill at all. I think we have very responsible limited video lottery owners in the EP. A lot of people talked about these little cafe bars and things like that, and they're run down. We don't see them in the EP like that. I mean, Palace Lounge is a full-on restaurant. They have machines. We've got the place right there on Eagle School Road. They're very good restaurants. They just happen to have these games in it. I didn't see a problem with that.
The way you have national advertising for these larger outlets that you can get an app on your phone for and do whatever you want. You've got the casino in Charlestown. How can you legally tell LVL establishments that they can't do the same thing? Is that not opening yourselves up to a greater lawsuit?
No, so this was part of when they legalized gambling back in, 10 years ago, 12, whenever that was. The casinos donate or don't donate. They charge 15% of their profits to the state. These LVL operators, they lose 51%, or they get charged 51%. Casinos are allowed to advertise with permission from the Lottery Commission. These LVLs can advertise on digital platforms, but they just can't do it on radio, TV, or things like that. This bill, honestly, was a good bill. It just got sideways, and people just thought that these people, it became about gambling, not about advertising.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Mike, last week the governor put out a statement that was kind of intemperate, vaguely threatening summer sessions and saying, we're not going to accept West Virginia's decline any longer. There's no excuse for inaction. There's no excuse for failing to move the needle on issues that matter. It seemed like he was angry. What was that about, and how did it go over?
Well, I haven't talked to him personally. I got the same message through, Twitter or X or whatever it is. Listen, I mean, he vetoed a rules package 2 days ago. I think Patrick is a really hands-on governor. He really has an opinion on a lot of things, and I think we're going to see a lot more vetoes. We managed to fix those through rulemaking yesterday, got that all sorted out so that rules package can come back and pass. I believe we're going to see a number of vetoes, and he has told us, and he's told me directly, that we will be coming back in special session multiple times to work on things. And that is his prerogative.
What are his hot buttons? Why is he vetoing?
Well, he vetoed a rules package that had to do with leadership PACs, what had to do with there was some clerical errors in two other rules that came back. One was not in bold. The title was not bolded, so he vetoed it. It's little things, but I think we're working them out. It's not uncommon for a new governor coming in to, veto things and have a little more say in what he wants done. I think the governor, from what he told me when I was in the mansion, I think he does want to work on school aid formula in the off season. He wants to work on PEIA. He wants to work on the backyard brawl. These are big ticket items that he's put at the top of his agenda, and I think he will bring us back. I don't know if we're going to get. I don't know about the budget and if he's going to veto line the budget. I just don't have enough information on that.
Michael, thank you. Appreciate you skipping out and doing the segment for us today.
My pleasure, guys. Always good to talk to you.
Have a good day, sir.
Thank you.